Okay. Welcome, everyone. Good morning. We know folks are coming in. Go ahead and get settled. Grab your coffee, your donut, whatever's getting you through the morning this morning. We'll be starting very shortly. So what was your breakfast of choice this morning? I saw the banana.
It had to be something I couldn't waste on myself, because if I
Right.
can, I will. So yeah, it was a banana so far, and I might have a yogurt or something. So
Yeah.
I'm a regular at Starbucks. They know me by first name.
Listen, they do too.
Mhm.
And the Starbucks by my house, like they just started a new one and it's drive-through. Oh
Oh,
my
yeah,
goodness.
it's
That
a
is
lot.
like such a rare thing. So I'm
It
like, drive-through, yay.
Yeah, they're like,
Get
"Good
my
morning."
morning
I'm like,
started.
"Hey." They were like, "You're regular?" "Absolutely."
I know. They're like, hey Janelle. I'm like, oh, hey. Am I here that often where you know my name? But of course you do. Of course you do.
That is right. That is right.
We'll wait another minute or so as people come in to join us this morning. Welcome, everyone. Come on in. Happy Friday. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. Happy Friday, everyone. It's the end of the week. Yay! Thank you all for being here on this Candidates Forum, this weekly Candidates Forum. My name is Janelle Henry, and I'm a guest moderator today. Really excited to be with you all this morning. We know that people are coming in, they're commuting, they're doing everything this Friday morning. So, so please welcome, join us for this really, really important conversation. So this will be less town hall, more conversation, more casual as you start your Friday morning off. And we're so excited to be covering candidates running for office. And this candidate on our screen today is no stranger to Virginia politics. Jennifer Carroll is joining us this morning. Thank you so much for being here with us, Jennifer. We're going to talk a little bit about your life, dig into it a little bit, and why you're running for office, why this is such an important election for you, and just answer some questions in the next 50 minutes or so. So we really thank you for taking some time out of your very busy schedule. We know a little bit about your life, those twins, so we know that you're busy, and so we really appreciate you taking the time out to be with us this morning. So good morning and welcome. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you so much, Janelle. It's great to be here with you. Thank you for doing this, and good morning, Nova DemBiz.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. So, what I wanted to start off with is you have such a diverse and great story. Your run for politics, you're no stranger to this. Like I said, you've done all the things. And a little bit about you, I really love your story. One of the first women to graduate from Virginia Military Institute, boss move right there. Former foster mom, a judge, public defender, serving in the Virginia House of Delegates. It's such an amazing story, and now running for state senate. So there was a moment in time in your life, some moment where you were like, I want to serve my community in this particular way. I want to get involved in politics. I want to run for office. Walk us through that process, because that is not an easy decision to make. Walk us through that process. What was happening in your world at that time? What was happening around you that made you want to say, you know what, I want to serve in this way? I've served in many ways, but I want to serve in this particular way. Talk to us about that.
Yeah, thank you for that question. So I have to say, to put it in context, I was born and raised in Petersburg, Virginia. And Petersburg was a thriving, predominantly African-American community. And then when jobs closed down, businesses left, it came upon some hardships. And so I was right there in that moment to see the transitioning happening. And I have a lived experience that I think informs why I fight, who I fight for, and the things that I see that's important. I believe that poverty is a policy decision. I believe that the way that you fight discrimination and racism is by passing policies that's intentionally anti-discriminatory and anti-racist. And so I know that I've always had public service instilled in me because I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandmother had me in church 3 days a week. I was in the choir, children's church, regular church, right? So
I
Bible.
remember that.
So, and I would just sleep sometime underneath the pews and trying to see over the women's big hats and, watching people get the Holy Spirit, and it was just awesome. But I always knew of service. I always knew that if you have it, you have to give it. My grandmother would have people from our community who fell on hard times come live with us. So becoming a foster parent wasn't a second thought. I think that's something, taking people in who needed help was something everyone did. My grandmother worked essential state mental health hospitals. So helping people with mental illness was something I think, I thought you should do. And so I've always, had a strong focus on public service. And even to my family's chagrin, when I became an attorney, I could have worked at White Shoe Law Firm and made a lot of money. And I decided to become a public defender, because when I say I'm a public defender, I'm not telling you what I do. I'm telling you who I am.
Right.
And I believe in helping the folks that have been ignored, neglected, and left behind. The person that you walked over when you left the grocery store who asked you for $2, that's my boss. That's my client. That's who I go to work every day and fight for, to ensure that they never re-enter the criminal justice system, that we find them housing, connect them with services, get them, on some type of substance abuse treatment if they need it, mental health services, because that's what we should be doing. So I remember around 2017, it was, the rising of Trump. And I just remember a lot of policies being put in place, especially for me as a public defender, that was very troublesome. So we had 3-strike laws in Virginia. We had mandatory minimums that took autonomy away from judges to be able to sentence people on a case-by-case basis. We had, this thing called interdiction, where in Virginia, we could tell a person that they could never possess or drink alcohol another day in their life. And they didn't have to come to court to be found interdicted. They didn't have to have really committed a crime. And we were one of only, I think, 2 or 3 states who still had that on the books. And my clients kept getting caught up in that net because it predominantly affects people who are homeless, because you have to see that that person has alcohol and they're drinking out in the open. And so with the Trump phenomenon that was happening, I really believe in, if not me, then who? And if not now, then when? And I knew that I could make a difference. I knew that we had no public defenders in the Virginia General Assembly ever. And so when you're hearing from one side of the aisle, you're hearing from one voice that informs policy. So there needs to be a diversity of perspectives. So I decided to run for the House of Delegates while pregnant with twins.
Yes, yes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, I mean, what a decision to make, what a decision to come to. And it just kind of goes to show the passion that you have and everything, especially as you were talking about like this very divided political scene that we're in right now, where, voices are being muted and it's really hard to get your opinion out there. The civil discourse is taking, just a step down. And so how do you fight your way through all of that and step up and be a voice that can be heard? How do you silence some of the political noise that's happening around and distinguish yourself from what's out there?
I attribute my ability to get things done from my training at Virginia Military Institute. So I made the decision to go to VMI when I was in my high school JRTC classroom. And I always kind of went against the grain. I always took the, unbeaten path. And so I was one of only a handful of girls in the class. And I remember we were watching the Virginia Military Institute Supreme Court decision on TV. And it wasn't until that time that I realized that there were institutes of higher learning that I couldn't attend simply because I was a female. And I remember hearing the jeers in the class and the boys say things like, well, women aren't as smart, we can't run as fast, we can't push as hard, and we belong where we should be, which is in the kitchen. So I immediately pushed back, especially when I heard former Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg when she said that women can do all things, period, if given the opportunity. So I said, I'm going to run. I'm going to go to VMI. And a male in my class, he was going to go to West Point, and he was my best friend. And he walked up to me after I made this declaration, and he said, you know what, Jen, I was going to go to West Point, but now I'm going to go with you when you go to VMI because I want to be there to watch you when you fail. And so,
plot twist. I did not see that coming.
Oh, neither did I. And so I looked at him and I said, well, challenge accepted. Let's go. So he went to VMI, so did I, and another male in our class. And when they got their head shaved bald, so did I. When they put on a man's uniform, I put on a man's uniform. And for years, I marched, sweat, and bled beside over 1,000 male cadets. And I'm here to tell you that out of the other two men who went with me to VMI, that I am the only one of us to walk across the Virginia Military Institute stage. So I say that because I think it puts a period on who I am, again, why I fight and who I fight for, because I have carried and passed the Equal Rights Amendment for Women's Equality, passed the bill to end pregnancy discrimination, passed bills in order to make it so people don't have to go to college if they choose not to, and get apprenticeships and have CTE and training and more funding into STEM, But that also training has taught me that my job is always to get the job done. I don't care if you have a D, I, or R beside your name. I am here on a mission. I am here to be effective. And that's why VPAP named me one of the most effective legislators in Richmond in my class. And it's because I can pass and carry the big bills, the huge budgets, and I can work in a bipartisan fashion and get things done. And so I've been able to pass bills in the majority and also in the divided government, while also working with Republicans and finding that common ground and negotiating and compromise so we can find something that will move all of Virginia forward. So I think that experience at Virginia Military Institute gave me the skill set and the know-how and the fortitude and determination to be able to become an effective legislator and be able to maneuver in certain rooms that people like me have, I guess, historically been excluded from. But again, I know that there are Virginians who are hurting. I know that there are Virginians who are dying. I know that a lot of the challenges that we face as a Commonwealth can be remedied through good policy. And I saw that firsthand as a public defender, and then coming in and, carrying the baton for criminal justice reform and working with everyone in there to tell them, I understand that you think this tough on crime policy is effective, but let me tell you how it really works. Let me tell you that we're trying to incarcerate ourselves out of addiction, which is an impossibility. Let me tell you how you incarcerating my client who has mental illness actually make things worse, because now they've decompensated while they're in jail. And how am I going to get them back on medications, right? Like all of those type of conversations can then be had. And that's how you get things done in an effective manner.
Wow. So we've already just started off with a powerful start. Again, welcome to those that are just joining us right now. This is a great conversation that we've started. And I just wanted to take a minute to remind all of our guests that are watching today that you can go ahead and be part of this conversation. You don't have to just be an observer. You can go ahead and drop your questions in the Q&A at the bottom of your screen. And I will sprinkle those questions in throughout this conversation today with Jen. So again, thank you for joining us, and we're off with this powerful start. So you touched on some of the issues that you care about the most, and I wanted to talk about a few of them just to help and ask you to kind of expand on your views on them. First, your stance on gun control, and talk a little bit about how it's affected you personally and what you want to do around gun control, just in the Virginia Senate, if you're able to do that.
Absolutely. So I think that now as a mom, I understand more intimately the fear that moms have every time our child or our children walk out that front door. I remember someone said before I had kids, Jen, sleep well now because you will never sleep this well again after you become a mother.
Wow.
And now I understand that. It's hard to see, my heart, walking outside of my body, embodied in these two little 5-year-olds. And I fear for them every single day because we live in a reality where when I send them to kindergarten today, there's a higher possibility because I'm in the United States and in Virginia, that I will never hug them again, that I will never be able to, see them off to college or watch them graduate or help them learn how to drive. And that's a reality that I know that I struggle with. And I know that so many other families do as well. I was a part of the first generation that saw routine school shootings. I remember when Columbine happened, but I also remember gunshots in my community. Coming again from Petersburg, it was very common to know a friend or family member who was a recent victim of gun violence. So I do believe that we have to do more. So while I'm excited to say I was a part of the General Assembly to help pass substantive gun legislation here in Virginia to make us all safe, whether that is red flag laws, so people who have demonstrated that they want to harm themselves or others, they can temporarily be dispossessed from their weapons until a hearing is had. And we make sure that everyone is safe because we know suicide is one of the main contributors to the high rate of gun violence. I know that making sure that people have to lock up their weapons, localities have control about which buildings you can take guns into. We've done a number of things, but the thing that we have yet to do, which I think would be most impactful, is an assault weapons ban. It was proven to be effective on the federal level when they implemented it, and I believe that will be effective here on the state level as well. That's why I'm excited that I've been deemed a common sense gun safety advocate by Moms Demand Action, because I have been unwavering and unequivocal in my support for common sense gun reform, because it has to happen and it has to happen now.
Thank you for that. We do have a question in the chat just from Michael. With a divided government in Virginia, will you sponsor or co-sponsor a bill to repeal right to work?
So I want to make it very clear that repealing right to work is something that is a part of the Democratic platform. Almost every other, social media tweet that the President of the United States, Biden, has posted has been pro repealing right to work. That our Congressman Bobby Scott carries the PRO Act, which will effectively repeal right to work nationwide. And I'm excited that it's been supported by Senator Tim Kaine and I believe all of our Congress people. So I am in line with our president, our vice president, our statewide officials, and say that I do support repealing right to work. And what that does is that it helps us grow the middle class. we have so much to thank for weekends and for healthcare and for all the protections that we have for workers, which then also helps employers and businesses. And so I know that we can not only be the best place to live, work, and raise a family, but we can also be one of the best places for businesses. And that's why the Chamber of Commerce has awarded me for my work in pushing forward career and technical education and my efforts towards STEM. And it's because I have an eye on ensuring that we build out the middle class and that we also build out businesses at the same time as well. So thank you for that question. And I'm excited to see us as a party get behind Repeal Right to Work in a big way. I believe it was a part of the DPVA's resolutions in 2020. So it's a party platform. And speaking with DemBiz, we have some hard charging Democrats on this call. So making sure that we all know where our values are, I think is really important.
Thank you. And thank you, Michael, for that question. Another issue, the gender gap and women's equality. What changes do you propose, or what changes in that area that you would like to see through policy?
Absolutely. So I'm excited to say that I carried and passed a bill to end pregnancy discrimination, which basically says that for pregnant people, you have to, as employer, provide reasonable accommodations. So if you have someone who is breastfeeding in the bathroom or in the coat closet, if there's an open office space, you can allow them to use that. And I think that that's, something where we can meet our people who are starting families in the middle. But if you don't have the resources, if you don't have the ability to make those accommodations, then that's fine. But we should, because it's a great thing to do. That's how we can keep pregnant people in the workforce longer and ensure we address the gender pay gap that we oftentimes see, because so many, women or people identify as women have to make decisions between their career and their child, and that shouldn't be. So we have to address some of those challenges there that push women out of and pregnant people out of the workforce, and definitely having things like paid family medical leave will do just that. And I've carried the bill for paid family medical leave, and we can do it in a way that will be streamlined and seamless, where the state picks up most of the upfront costs. It can be paid through bonds, and it will be bought in over time. That will be something else that can also help. And it has a limit. So if you are a micro business or extremely small businesses, 1 or 2 employees, it won't affect you. If you have over a certain threshold, then you can buy into the system to make sure that we get this done. I believe that we should have more pay transparency. Many times people who have been underserved and underpaid don't know or don't advocate for themselves when they are obtaining new employment, and they typically tend to get paid less. I don't have to tell the people on this call that equity and equality is a part of our platform as Democrats, and it's extremely important. And whatever we can do to address that, I believe that we have to. So pay transparency, paid family medical leave, making sure that we have mechanisms to help people get back into the workforce, having more slots for our pre-K children to be able to enter preschool. I believe in universal pre-K. And the only reason why we don't have it here in Virginia is a matter of funding. But we have so many revenue sources that's coming in, such as when we legalize marijuana to the point where we can distribute it and tax it. That money can go directly to having more slots for our 3 and 4-year-olds for pre-K. That will also help a lot of people with families to be able to return back to the workforce quickly. Because I can tell you, as a mom in Northern Virginia, preschool is expensive. I pay more for childcare than I do my mortgage. And that is a common theme that you find with a lot of women in the workforce. So these are just some of the things that we can do to make sure that we address equity and fairness, and especially when we're talking about the gender pay gap and women's equality.
Perfect. Great. Great. So you mentioned in a lot of what you said, you've been working hard, doing all of the work, and you talked about working across the aisle and bipartisan efforts. That is a word that we hear often. We hear everything is about bipartisanship. Everything is about working across the aisle. But what does that look like? Like, what does that look like when you are kind of operating in a very divided climate? And so Lauren asks, please give us a couple of anecdotes of working across the aisle on a set of issues. What can you say, in a positive vein about our current governor? And then what are some things in a negative vein? That's how it was put here, but some things for improvement perhaps. But what does that really mean? Kind of break down working across the aisle. What does that look like? Walk us through that process, because I think a lot of people don't know what that really means and considers it like a buzzword.
Absolutely. So what bipartisanship and working across the aisle really means, it means first coming to the table. So when I was first elected to the House of Delegates, I made a commitment to myself. And my commitment was to shake the hands and get to know at least 3 Republicans, right? We're not talking about policy, we're talking about families. I don't want to know what you're carrying on the floor. I want to know what's life like for you at home, and what do you really care about, and ways that we can work together, finding that commonality, finding that humanity in other people, I think is really important. And when you're open to having those conversations, that's how you can find ways and things that you agree on, that you can either help them pass some bills or they can help you pass some bills. Because I think it really comes down to trust. Politics is all about relationships, and you want people to respect you, want them to trust you and know that you're in this for the right reasons. And that's a sentiment that's been shared with me from another number of Republicans. They know that, things I do, I don't have malice, right? I don't, care for the partisan politics and the football playing. I really care about getting things done. And so I really want to hunker down and figure out how we can do that. So when I was carrying the bill to expand broadband to rural communities, the people who will be most served by that are my friends on the other side of the aisle, right? And bringing them into the conversation and saying, how can we get this done? We have to ensure that we can secure jobs in Southwest Virginia, that our children can learn virtually, that we expand telemedicine and telehealth in Southwest and rural Virginia. And the only way we can do that is by expanding a rural broadband. How can we make it more affordable? How can we get it out there? And so bringing them to the table and saying, let's work together and get this done. That's exactly what I did. Whether it is something as, I guess you could say, neutral as that, or maybe something more as hot button as Medicaid expansion. We got Medicaid expansion passed here in Virginia because Republicans got on board. And they got on board because of the relationships that some elected officials had on the other side of the aisle to say, listen, this will help your constituents and mine. Clearly, this is an important issue. We have people who can't afford cancer treatments. We have individuals who can't get mammograms. We have to be able to ensure that as many people are covered by healthcare as possible. So that's what it looks like when it's successful. What it looks like when it's not successful is both parties being tribal and going to their corners and not coming out. And any conversation looks like treason. That is ineffective government. And unfortunately, we're in an environment right now where that is kind of the status quo. And so, the times where, there was more collegiality amongst the parties and the people on the different sides of the aisle has been tempered, and that's really unfortunate. And so one of the things I really look forward to doing as the next state senator for the 33rd district is really bringing back that, the conversation, making sure that we are working as much as we possibly can in a bipartisan fashion, because people have different ideas and ways to do things, and oftentimes they are good. And if they're not, you don't have to do it. But people appreciate that you respect them enough to hear their voice and not play political games with people's lives. And I really think that that's what it's about. So when it's successful, it's really successful. When it's not, you see a grinding halt to good policies being passed. You see budgets not being approved like we have now. And that's not what most families want. They want to know that their elected officials can get long enough to be able to get work done. I can't tell a person on the street who is, needing health care that, oh, we couldn't get it done because I don't want to talk to the people on the other side. That's unacceptable. And so we have to do better in general. And I look forward to making sure that we go back to a place where we can be effective and have those conversations and get things done.
It's interesting that you mentioned that. I worked at C-SPAN for 20 years covering politics on Capitol Hill. And I remember producing one hearing that was literally talking about civility in Congress and some of the ideas that they had about, kind of reaching across the aisle. It literally came down to things like, let's have lunch together. How are your kids? What are you up to this weekend? Let's go on a retreat and not talk about politics. And just the idea of just sitting down and having a meal together and kind of taking politics or policy off the table and just having that interaction so that I can see you as a person and not as, like you said, treason or a threat. And that, can help bridge the gap. And those were just some of the ideas that were thrown out there. And it was so interesting to me to see that as an idea when that's such a fundamental part of how we often engage with each other. So I think that's really interesting when you were talking about, just going and saying hello and just trying to get to know someone. And everyone's trying to figure out the formula and how to do that. And it doesn't seem like it's that difficult. It just seems like we just need to interact as humans need to interact. So, thank you for sharing that. We have another question. The chat is busy today from Paul. He writes, you rightly mentioned the importance of Virginia's red flag law and the governor's refusing to accept millions of federal dollars to educate Virginians about the law to make it more effective. The Virginia gun violence prevention group, Safer Country, has been speaking out about this. Will you be a voice to demand he accept and use these funds to prevent gun tragedies? How do you respond?
Yes, thank you for that question. And absolutely, I worked with many groups, including Safer Countries before, in order to make sure that the attention is paid and directed towards policies that's going to be most impactful. But you can have great policies in place, but if you don't have the budgets to support that, or the money allotted to educate the public about what you've done, then it really has no teeth. It really kind of goes nowhere. And so I do believe that we have to ensure that more people are aware of our red flag laws. It is something that has been supported in a bipartisan fashion, especially with our extremely high rates of suicide in Virginia and across this country. So more do have to be done. And it is really unfortunate that, again, people would play partisan politics with policies that could save lives, and making sure that, we push back on that, that we find ways and avenues, maybe even on a local level, to ensure that people are aware. I know that there's a lot of great work being done in different counties throughout Virginia to educate the general public and law enforcement agencies that if there's a person who's threatening to harm someone or to harm themselves, that there's this mechanism that you can petition to have this person, separated from their weapons temporarily so they can be evaluated, hopefully treated until, the emergency has subsided. And I think that's, one of the tools that we have in our toolbox that we have to really use to ensure that we curb gun violence here in Virginia and throughout the country.
Thank you, Paul, for that question. So I want to take us back to your time in the Virginia House of Delegates. You're working hard, you're a part of passing bills, you're working on legislation, you're raising a family, you're doing all of those things. And sometimes it's hard to stop and pause and remind yourself of like what you're really proud of. If there was one single moment that you're just like, man, like I really was proud of this moment or proud of this work. Is there anything that stands out to you? I mean, I know everything is important and everything, like you're totally proud for everything you've done, but sometimes it's just great to stand back and be like, I'm really proud of this particular accomplishment. Can you tell us a little bit about what that is for you while you were serving in the House of Delegates?
That's a really great question. I have to say that It was two. One on a broader scale was expanding Medicaid to over 500,000 Virginians. That was absolutely incredible. Many people said that it would never happen here in Virginia, but I heard from so many people who were struggling. I too, when I was younger, had to cut my grandmother's medication in half because that's all we could afford to do. And I remember having to make the hard decision between, at the kitchen table, between whether we're going to pay for our mortgage that month or for the medications keeping my grandmother alive. And I thought that, in the richest nation in the world and one of the wealthiest countries in in the United States, no one should be making those type of decisions. So to be able to pass Medicaid expansion so many people can have access to safe, affordable health care, it was common sense. It was something that people said we couldn't do here in Virginia, but we got it done. So that was amazing. But I have to say, for me personally, one of the bills or resolutions that I passed that I'm most excited about, and I will never forget that moment, had to be the Equal Rights Amendment. So I remember having conversations about the Equal Rights Amendment shortly after 2017, after speaking with Eileen and having Abigail Spanberger's mom, and who's amazing. And she, constantly talked to me about the Equal Rights Amendment and what we need to do to pass it. And I eventually looked at her and said, Eileen, well, let's get it done, right? Let's get it done. And, we came up with a game plan of how to do it. And the execution was amazing. Having a Equal Rights Amendment bus tour throughout Virginia to educate people that the Equal Rights Amendment was still a thing, even though we have the 14th Amendment. Many people believe that women's equality was already enshrined in the United States Constitution,
Right.
and it's
Right.
not. So being able to do that, bring everyone to the table. We even had Republicans who were in support, wish we had more, but a few did come over to our side and say, women's equality is important. I have daughters, I have a mom, I have aunts, and, I do think that they need to see themselves in our founding document because they were intentionally left out, so they should be intentionally put in. It was absolutely amazing. So we were able to get that done. And I remember being on the House floor and seeing my son. He had to have been like 1 or 2 at the time. And just him looking up and seeing the lights and seeing all the people and the energy and excitement. And he had no idea what mommy was doing in that moment. But mommy was helping to make Virginia the 38th and final state needed to enshrine women's equality into the United States Constitution. And I just looked at him and I almost cried because I knew that one day I could tell him about this photo, about this moment and what you're doing. And he was there to witness it. And it was absolutely amazing, especially for someone who's experienced sexism, whether it's my time at Virginia Military Institute, but it's when you are leading battalions or in boardrooms, this is what women have to deal with. And to know that we're in 2023, we're still paid around 80 cents to the dollar of men, to know that we are still, not protected as we should be, whether it's laws or in the Constitution. This is something that goes so far to help so many people. And I know I stand on the shoulders of giants who came before me, who's been fighting for this before I was alive, before my mother was alive. So in that moment, I have to say it was the most impactful, amazing top 5 times in my life that I knew that I was in the right place at the right moment, doing the right thing. And it made all the turmoil of running for office so worth it.
Wow. Now you mentioned top 5. So now my curiosity is like, wait a minute, what were the other ones? What are the other numbers?
Okay. Well, listen, I want to stay married. Okay. I like my husband. I want to keep him around. So of course, marrying my friend, my partner, the love of my life.
That you met the first week.
I did.
Wow.
The first week at Virginia Military Institute. He'll always say he looked over at me with my bald head and said, I'm gonna marry her. And so
that's a good man right there.
Oh, it is. So I couldn't do any of this or what I do without him. And so of course him and that, and then of course having my twins, amazing. They are walking miracles. So they are absolutely fantastic. And I have to say that, of course, walking that stage across, Virginia Military Institute, it felt good. It felt good even, and I held on to that feeling, even though I heard the boos, the jeers, even
Ooh, that
though,
day. Wow. Wow.
and I just held it in because I knew that this moment was bigger than me. I knew that, my blood, sweat, and tears was for the goal of creating a path so other women can walk it. You know, anything that you do, whenever you're the first of anything, it's never easy. And I was thinking then that we are in this moment. Back then, it was like 2003 or so, and we're still having our first, right? Um, but at the end of the day, I knew the sentiment that women didn't belong at VMI would subside once they see who we are, how we can rise to any challenge, how we are the best, multitaskers, how, we are powerful and strong. And, once they saw that, I knew that the idea of women at Virginia Military Institute or military, colleges would change, or women in infantry will change, or women in, leading, battalions and companies will change. And it has. With time, things get better, but there always have to be the sacrifice. And to know that me and all those women who are VMI, through the late nights and the 20-mile marches and, all the things made it worth it, because now it's so much easier for the women who have come behind me. So I have to say that definitely makes the list as well.
Wow. Well, thank you for sharing your top 5. I was like, okay, I gotta ask her because I want to know the rest of them. So you're on the campaign trail. You're actively campaigning. You're talking to people. You're on the ground. You're at events. What are you hearing from your constituents? Like, what are they saying? What are they talking about? Are you finding that there's any disillusionment with the political process at this point?
Those are good questions. I find that there's a lot of frustration with the political process right now. And, what I'm hearing is that people feel like no one is above the law. They feel like there has been a lack of accountability. But that's more conversations directed towards the federal level. On the state level, what I'm hearing is just everyday kitchen table issues. And people are not happy about the tax on education, our teachers, or trans children. So I've heard a lot about that, needing to make sure that we teach age-appropriate, accurate information to our children in schools, that we need to trust our teachers. And they're doing everything they can. They do so much with so little. I'm at a number of teachers who are still paying for children's school supplies because they're in a Title I school. And this child has come to class with no paper, no pen. So what are they going to do? Well, that teacher is going to do what teachers have been doing for years. They're going to come out of their pocket, out of their paycheck, and they're going to make sure that they provide for that child. So I'm hearing a lot of that. And, I've been endorsed by the Prince William Education Association because of all of my advocacy, ensuring that we pay teachers what they deserve, which is at least a national average. We fully fund our standards of quality, which means that the state pays their fair share towards our schools and not forcing localities and some poor localities to pick up the purse. That we are advocating more diverse school nurses and counselors and paraprofessionals in our classrooms, because we have a shortage of English as second language learners and teachers, and special needs teachers to address our kids with, help our kids with IEPs. So all of those things are conversations that I'm hearing. And it's something that we can do something about if we put our money where our mouth is and not make empty promises to the people who sacrifice the most. And I think that that's important. I'm also hearing a lot about traffic congestion as well. No one wants to be in traffic for 2 hours going 20 miles. Including me. So making sure that we give more money to Northern Virginia Transportation Authority, that we have more multimodal avenues for people to get to work, to school, to doctor's appointments. So I believe in more bike trails, more walking paths. We have to, get the Metro Blue Line down to Prince William County, something me and State Senator Scott Serval has been advocating for a very long time. And then I'm excited for that high-speed rail to come through our counties. It'll be going from DC to Richmond to Hampton Roads, and that has already, that money has already been allocated, and the Virginia Railway Authority has been approved. So I'm really excited to see those projects through as well. And the Occoquan flyover is something that I support to address that traffic congestion going from Fairfax to Prince William County. When you have to go through Occoquan, we have to do something about that. So having those conversations and hearing from people what their problems are and let them know that I am solution oriented, that I understand the bills and budgets that can be put in place to make their quality of life so much better, it's really exciting. So I have to say that those are the top two things that I've heard. And then there's usually a tie between guns and the attack on abortion rights as number three, number three for concerns for voters and hopeful constituents of mine in the 33rd district.
Great, thank you. We have a few more questions coming in. If you are elected in November, what committees would you seek to get appointed to? Explain.
So I know they're gonna put me on judiciary because I'm an attorney. And so those meetings go to 2, 3 a.m. And I'm like, y'all, it has to be a better way.
2 in the morning.
So
and you're back up again at like 6.
Yeah.
The boys are gonna make you get up at 6.
Yeah, they're like, oh, hi lady, who are you? It's insane. But again, the General Assembly as is not built for working moms, but we'll leave that at that for right now. And so I have to say that I know I'll be on judiciary, which I do enjoy. I do enjoy reading the bills that come through, making sure that people hear from a public defender perspective, because I was the first and only public defender ever elected to the Virginia General Assembly. Why? Because it's hard. It's hard working full-time as an attorney and then going down and being a part-time legislator. You know, it's very, very difficult. Rarely do you have a job that'll let you take 2, sometimes 3 months off to be able to do the good work in the business of the Commonwealth. But I have to say judiciary is something I look forward to, addressing some more issues in our criminal justice system regarding fairness, attacking cash bail in a real way. And there's some other things that we can do. But judiciary, I know, will be one. Commerce and labor. I look forward to being on commerce and labor. I have a great familiarity with, you know, working families, workers, things that we need to have in place to make our businesses thrive, to make our workers or ensure our workers have safe job sites, that they are thriving in Virginia. So I look forward to that. And I have to say the third one, I would probably want to be at finance and appropriations, because one of the things I learned as a legislator is that you could pass all the great bills that you want, but it doesn't matter if you don't have the budget amendment. And so you have to have the money. You have to find the money and dedicated revenue sources to be able to actually implement some of the great ideas and policies that we want to put forth here in Virginia. And it's easier when you have a seat at the table to really advocate for the things that you know definitely need to take precedent and should be funded. So we know how our pocketbooks work, and the government is the same. You can't, or you should not, spend what you don't have, but you can always find ways to bring in more to be able to do more. So, you know, if I want to take a lavish, luxurious trip, then that may mean I have to get a part-time job, right? To bring in that money to be able to pay for this. And the government works the same way. So one of the things I really pride myself on is ensuring that I have pay-fors, that all of the policies that I fight for and I want to implement, I have a way that we are going to be able to pay for it here in the Commonwealth of Virginia without raising people's taxes. I believe in a progressive tax code and doing things that's going to uplift Virginians, making sure we have well-funded schools, fire departments, police forces, that we have safe roads. We can do all the things that we need to do here, but do it in a way where we have a balanced budget and also continue to put more money into our rainy day fund. That's why I was excited as a legislator to help make sure that Virginia, we kept our AAA bond rating, and we navigated through the COVID crisis as one of the most successful states in the nation. And that's because we had well-versed, committed principals, elected officials in office to make sure that we protected ourselves while also not starving our services or our employees.
Thank you. Oh, okay, so the chat is busy and I'm looking at the clock. We have about 12 more minutes left before we wrap up. And I have a few questions that I want to get in at the end. But Keith is talking about the Prince William County is setting up a new crisis resource center to address mental health challenges. Mental health, I know it's huge, it's big. Would you support continued state funding for this program?
Oh, absolutely. So I'm excited to say that I am endorsed and supported by the Prince William County Board of Supervisors. And I can tell you that, you know, they have done some amazing things that I've seen up close and personal. They've been able to pretty much have a flat tax rate, so no tax increases in Prince William County, while they're also starting great things like the crisis receiving unit, where people with mental illness, when they're having an emergency, you can take them to that unit. It's great for law enforcement officers who tell me all the time how it takes their manpower off the streets when they have to sit with the individual waiting to be evaluated and diagnosed and treated for mental illness. And so they love it as well. It's one of the top requests that I heard from law enforcement, to have a crisis receiving unit. And then it's a great diversion program too, because oftentimes people have mental health emergencies. It's not that they're trying to be disorderly. It's the fact that they're responding to internal stimuli or having conversations with people who aren't there. So what they really need is treatment and not incarceration. So it's a fantastic program that they have. But when I tell you that they are going to have a health department, that they are, they've given double-digit pay increases to law enforcement, to the fire departments. I mean, they've just done amazing things, and I'm very proud of them. As well, the Fairfax County Board, too. They are getting amazing things done. One of the safest counties in the country per population, per capita. I mean, these two counties that I'll be represented in the 33rd are doing exceptionally well. And I look forward to working with the county boards to make our localities the best in the country.
Thank you. Another hot button issue that we'll see if you could try to wrap up in a short amount of time, but we mentioned that you touched on it a little bit earlier about accurately teaching and reflecting history. And so talk a little bit about the history curriculum debate and in particular the 1619 project, if you have any thoughts about that, would you like to share with us today?
Absolutely. So recently there's been an attack on our teaching of history here in Virginia. And I think some people who want to be divisive, they saw the attack on or the narrative of CRT as being effective in helping to flip some seats here in Virginia. And they want to continue the attacks on education and teachers in order for their own political gain. And that's really unfortunate. So there are some things that came down the pipe that said, you know, that divisive things such as Martin Luther King Jr. Or slavery should not be taught here in Virginia, or that there should be a certain age group or age set where kids can learn about our history. You know, I trust teachers. I really do. I trust teachers. My husband is a teacher. I used to be a substitute teacher. I know the sacrifices they make. I know how hard they work. And, you know, there's so many things are stacked against them that now to vilify them and demonize them in this way is absolutely unacceptable. So they should be teaching age-appropriate, accurate history here in our Commonwealth. We should leave it to the experts who have the degrees and the experience and the knowledge base to draw from to decide what our children should be learning. There is a reason that in Virginia, we have a very high rate of our children graduating from high school and having not only degrees, but multiple degrees and graduate degrees. And it's because we have thriving schools. And so making sure that, we roll back these attacks on education is a top priority when I am elected as state senator. As far as the 1619 project, I always believe that, we need to hear from as many voices as we possibly can. And sometimes that history is uncomfortable. We have to learn about the original sin that was based right here in Virginia. It's unfortunate that I didn't learn about the Tulsa race riots until I was in college, that, there's certain parts of our history people want to gloss over or get creative when it's time to expand on it. And we just can't do that. If we don't learn from our mistakes, then we're doomed to repeat them. And I truly believe that. I believe that our children should be stretched and they should learn, as much as they possibly can, again, in an age-appropriate contextual manner, but we can't hide folks from the truth just because it's uncomfortable. And so the 1619 project, I believe, is doing a lot to carry the conversation on and saying, here is another way to look at things. And these are some of the things that may not have been taught to you in secondary school that really should have been. And it's important to have those voices and those conversations. And I think of all the things it has made people have conversations about our history and how we can teach it in a holistic manner, how we can make the connections between the present and the past, and we can hear other people's narratives and not just the majority's narratives about what happened to the people here in our country. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Our last question from our guest is, it says, proud of you, Jennifer, from Tom. Can you talk a little bit about how important it is to keep a Democratic majority in the Virginia Senate?
Oh, I can't stress it enough. So I have to tell you that Governor Youngkin has made it very clear that one of his top priorities is to flip the state Senate. It is the one thing that's keeping a lot of hurt and harm from happening to the people of Virginia. It is the one thing that's keeping him from being able to execute his agenda here in Virginia. And so because that state Senate has been that brick wall, keeping a lot of those bad bills from becoming law, it has had a double effect. It's made our governor appear to be more moderate and more tempered, but that's not true. What's happened is that we have a state Senate who has been unwavering in ensuring that we protect our democratic progress here in Virginia, and that we build a Virginia that is focused on making sure that we are open for business, but also being the best place to live, work, and raise a family. I am excited to join that state Senate and add a voice to that, to add a vote to making sure that the right thing happens. So not only playing defense, but playing offense and hopefully getting some more good bills and budgets passed to uplift all Virginians. And some people will say, well, how are you going to do that? It can't happen. And I say that I already have a record of getting things done. I've been able to pass bills while in the minority in a divided government because I know how to work in a bipartisan fashion. And you can trust me with the big bills and budgets and being able to get things done. We have done the impossible here in Virginia. And now that we've done it, I know we can do anything. So ensuring that we keep or expand the Senate Democratic majority while also flipping the House of Delegates is imperative. And then, of course, coming together to ensure that we have a Democratic governor in place so we can have the trifecta again, which makes it a lot easier to be able to get amazing things done. That's why we were able to repeal the death penalty, why we were able to pass all the bills to help businesses and veterans and, you name it, we got it done here in Virginia, protecting abortion rights, voting rights. We now have early voting that has begun here in Virginia, 45 days. And it's because we had the trifecta and we were able to get these things done in that moment. So I can't emphasize it enough how important it is for us to expand our Senate Democratic majority, having good, principled, passionate public servants in office, getting things done for all of you. And I can tell you that in office, I will ensure to increase career and technical education. I believe 500,000 new jobs will be created here in Virginia. And we have to make sure our students are career ready and take advantage of the growth in high tech and high growth industries. STEM is important, making sure that our children can graduate and have that knowledge base to be able to draw from, coding to be able to draw from. We know that people who are in the STEM fields, those jobs tend to pay more, and those are faster growing jobs than non-STEM fields. So focusing on that, I mean, all of these things tie in together to assure we improve businesses, and of course, helping small and women and minority-owned businesses here in Virginia by making sure we increase the discretionary funding that we allocate for our SWAM businesses here in Virginia is really, really important, because that's something that I've heard a lot, and making sure that more business have access to capital. So I'm excited to continue on this journey. I hope my work as a delegate shows that I'm ready to be the state senator for the 33rd district and continue to do good things here in the Commonwealth.
Well, thank you so much, Jennifer, for being with us this morning. Thank you for all those amazing questions to our guests in the audience. We appreciate them. They were very thorough and really struck the right tone for this kind of conversation. So I want to take one more minute of your time, because I think, you're not just a politician, you're not just running for office, you're not just a mom, you're not just a wife, you are many things. You are a whole person. And I want to know, what are you binging right now? How do you unwind? Do you even have time to binge anything right now on TV? But how do you unwind in this kind of busy life that you have right now, like doing amazing work, but how do you pause for a minute? What's your self-care?
That's a really great question. So I don't have time to binge watch. I have time to binge eat. And so I
love that.
So I don't have many vices. I don't drink, I don't smoke, but I love a good meal. So I'm such a foodie. Food helps me relax. It makes me feel good. So I have to say, excuse me, going to good restaurants, my husband ordering in. You thought I was going to say cook, but no.
I was about to say, like, oh, what's your favorite dish? Do you cook?
Please, no.
You're like,
No, thank you. No, thank you.
Thank you, restaurants. Thank you, restaurants. That's okay. Virginia has great restaurants, so.
Oh, me too. Helping the economy.
Right.
So yeah, I have to say that's what I do for fun. I eat. But yeah, and I also work out, I run. I love taking my kids to the pool. I do certain things to try to, go back to things that I love to do when I was not a politician. So I used to salsa dance. People don't know that I'm a very good salsa dancer. Bachata, merengue, I love it. And I like to work on old school cars. I had a 1972 Chevy Nova I recently sold that I fixed up. I'm excited about that.
Very cool. That is super cool.
It is. So I like to work on old school cars, which is a cool hobby of mine as well. So yeah.
Wow. And I was like, where do you have the time to do that? But that's the whole point, right? Is to kind of make time to do the things that you love. So thank you so much again for joining us this morning. Thank you for being part of our candidate series and just, being part, sharing your story, your personal story, but also what elevated you to this position and why you are running for office. So we really appreciate this time, and, good luck to you in this Senate race.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you, Janelle. You did an amazing job.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you, DemBiz, for having me be a guest moderator. I hope y'all invite me back again. Have a great, great day, everyone. A great weekend, and happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there and those of us like me that are aunties that love to mother everyone. Happy Mother's Day to you all this weekend. Have a great weekend, everyone.
See you, everyone. Bye.
Bye. Cool. That was great.
Yes, thanks. Oh,
So, I mean, your story on paper is so fun. Oh, I think it's still recording.